Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for coming to watch this interview today. My name is Anna Kotonen. I am a native of Finland, and today I am talking rye bread with Katja, who is also born and raised in Finland. Welcome, Katja.
Thank you.
Thank you for interviewing with me today. So could you please tell us a little bit about rye bread, what it is like, and the significance of it to Finnish people?
Okay, so rye bread is quite dark. It's made of rye, obviously, but the dough that is made of is syrup, so it's not sweet. And it's a Finnish national food, and the Finns have been eating it hundreds of years, and it has a really huge impact in our daily lives when we eat and in our food traditions. And Finland is actually #1 in rye consumption in the world. And next Finland comes Poland and then Estonia. So it gives you a picture of how important that is really for the Finns to eat this rye bread. The traditional bread has been made in two typical formats. In Western Finland, the rye bread was made in this kind of format, thin and hole in the middle, because the bread was produced in huge amounts and it was hung on a
Birch?
Yes, on the kitchen ceiling, and then you pick up from there and then you dip it into milk, and so it becomes soft again. So that was a Western Finland type of making the rye bread. And then in Eastern Finland, rye bread was produced in much thicker format, and it was supposed to be eaten quicker, so they didn't dry this one. But what was very typical in Eastern Finland was that the cap of the bread was cut off, and it was carved and filled with Baltic herring and pork meat. And men, when they went to forest for logging or to the fields, they took this bread filled with fish and pork meat as a meal to join them for working. So
Wonderful.
it has sorry?
Wonderful.
So it has really huge significance in an everyday life. And during the Great Famine in 1866, rye bread was vital to keep people alive. And when there became then shortage of the rye because of the cold summer, when there was frost and people were not able to grow grain and rye, people had to add bark to the floor of the bread. And so it was a combination, but rye was really the thing keeping people alive. And there is a Finnish saying that rye bread keeps a man on the go. That also refers to that was kind of this format filled with the meat was the one to take with you.
Right.
When working.
Right. So
and today, when we have our meals, we have these small pieces of rye bread. We cover them with Baltic herring. We use cheese or different sausages, and obviously a lot of butter.
Right. So you would say nowadays it is more like a sandwich type of food or something to eat with another meal instead of bringing it with you as itself.
Yes, absolutely. It has changed, but still it's very important and it's very typical that people have to have this rye bread with their meals. I personally don't eat bread with my meals, but I eat rye bread in the morning.
Right. Coming back to, you said there were differences between Western and Eastern Finland. So the Eastern Finnish people, you said they were making less but more often than the
yes.
Western.
Well, typical is that this bread was produced or baked once a week, because in farmhouses they had these huge baking ovens, and you heat them up, and then they prepared the food for the next week, so to say. And then there was also the baking of the bread during that day, and they made huge amounts of that. And earlier it was in the 1900s, they calculated that one person would consume one bread of this type a week.
So a lot of rye bread.
Yes, yes. And in Western Finland, I don't know about their calculations, but they had these hanging on the kitchen roof in these porches. And then they were obviously dry, so you pick them down and then you sink them into milk or something, and it becomes softer.
Right. So you could store that for the winter and so forth. So you would bake more and then store it for later.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. That was the meaning.
That makes sense. So nowadays, is it common for people to bake their own, or is it more of like you go to a grocery store to get it?
You go to grocery store. Some people like to bake it. I have never done it. My former mother-in-law, she used to bake the rye bread herself, but that's the only person I know who has been doing it. The quality of the rye bread in Finland is, of course, extremely high, so it's no problem to buy it from the grocery store.
Awesome. How about, what's the key point or the benefit of rye instead of using some other grain like oats or wheat? For example, in agriculture, is it different to grow, or are there differences already in that aspect of the process?
Yes, well, obviously the grain types of rye are more suitable to these Scandinavian or Nordic conditions, weather conditions, hard winters, short summers. So that's why rye became quite rapidly very common and popular in Finland hundreds of years ago. And also the fact that it's very kind of solid, so it's kind of food instead of, if you compare to wheat, it's considered as for cakes.
Right. So more nutritious than wheat or other grains.
It holds the hunger away much longer.
Right, right. So complex carbohydrates, or however you would say that.
Something like that. You know that better.
Right.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this about rye bread.
Welcome.
It was a very interesting history behind it, and now even I know a lot more about it, even though I was born and raised in Finland, but you know, you never know too much. So yeah, thank you so much, Katja. And
thank you. You're welcome. Bye.